Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Workbench. This is the second episode in a series where we're going to be considering how to really nail down those finer points of creating a fantasy world and using that to create a fantasy story. In the last episode, we considered the 3 different types of fantasy setting. If you missed that, have a look down in the description, there's a link there to episode 1. In this episode, we're going to be considering one of those different settings, which was the high fantasy setting, a made-up fictional world where your story can take place. For that, of course, you're going to have to create a map. You need to know where your story is going to be taking place. So today we're going to be looking at a few different strategies for how to create the coastlines of your map, the shapes and sizes of continents, really making sure that it feels natural and it's not just something that you've made up. Now, as any fantasy reader or writer knows, the map, especially in high fantasy, is a really integral part of your storytelling. The map is, a lot of the time, the reader's first impression of your world. It's at the front of the book. It's something that readers very often have a flick to first to get an idea of the different locations, the names of places, the topography of your world. And it's a window into your story for a new reader. So it's really, really important that your map tells the story that you want it to tell. Maps have been an integral part of human history from the very beginning. From Pomponius Mela's map of Europe, which, as you can see, wasn't exactly as it should be, but it was it was one of the first maps that was used for navigation. All the way through to some of the more famous fantasy maps that we might be familiar with. For example, Tolkien's map of Middle-earth, which really is the benchmark that a lot of fantasy map makers use. To different styles of maps, like the map of Discworld, Terry Pratchett's series, which, as you can see, is entirely on a disc. It's a circle, so there are very clear defined borders of the map. This is an idea that I took for my book, which actually I have got my cover. It came in the post 2 days ago. This is my copy of the Phantasm Chronicles, The Call of the Cardinal, by me, Maclellan Moorwood. And you can see from the map that I decided that I wanted very defined borders. My map ends at the edge of the paper, and you can see that the area around the outside is labelled as the Hinterworld, unexplored. It was important for my story that the world have very clear borders with levels of unknown beyond the edges of that, so that extra beings cannot enter the world from the outside. A similar situation occurs in L. Frank Baum's map of Oz, which has very defined borders of sometimes oceans, sometimes deserts on all 4 sides, so that Oz is a self-contained world. The alternative to that is having part of your map have a coastline and part of it disappearing off the edge of the map to other areas of your world that maybe are less explored within your story, as Tolkien did. He wanted to have that defined ocean that the protagonists could cross at the end, but he also wanted to have that eastern and northern and southern borders that could be unexplored by our characters, that people could enter from. This is also explored in the map of Narnia, which accompanies some copies of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and the other Chronicles of Narnia, wherein a lot of its borders disappear off the map so that there can be other lands that are unexplored in the main stories. But then there's also an eastern shore, which of course comes in to importance later on when the main characters sail off on the voyage of the Dawn Treader. But there is something that all of these continent boundaries, all of these oceans and coastlines have in common? They all feel very geologically natural. They don't look like somebody has just put a pen to paper and done a wiggly line. It's scattered with little islands, clusters of land, maybe brigs and inlets and fjords, different areas of the coastline that give it a real feel, a real character. And of course, when you come to populate your map, more on that next week, you're going to be thinking about settlements alongside your coast. You might decide to have a think about, well, what would fit where? How will this be affected by rivers, for example? But the first thing we really need to consider is that coastline. And I'm going to talk you through one of my favourite ways of generating that. Okay, so to begin creating my fantasy map, I have a few things prepared. I have a piece of paper. I've got a tray to put it on because that's really important for when it comes to what I'm about to do. I also have here some baking beads. You could use some dried chickpeas or beans or sand, anything that you think you might be able to scatter around. But I've got some baking beads here just because I happen to see them in the shop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create a pattern with them that feels natural, but also which is going to suit my needs. So I'm going to start by emptying them out. I'm going to go like this. And I don't want it just to be where they lay. It doesn't have to be like that. I need to be able to think, right, what do I actually want my world to look like? So I might bring some over here. I might put some more like that. Okay, so there we go. That's something along the lines of what I might be wanting. I might decide to change something later, but I have here an idea of what I want the shape of my continent to be. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to start by coming around here. I'm going to go in where these beads are. In here like that. I might come out like this. Like all the way down here. I like the idea of that one coming up like that, to create almost like a peninsula. I think that this bit here is going to be my northern border, which is going to disappear off the map, so that's going to be mainland. I like the idea of this, since they've sort of clumped together, being like its own little island. I might have another island there that disappears off the map. Gives that idea. It might just be another island. It might be the beginning of a new big mass of land. I'm going to come around here. I love this here. It's like a little sort of inlet, like a little bay. Of course, if you don't like what you come up with, you can always have another go at it later. You can add some things in. So I might add something in here just to add a little bit of extra to it. Do I want this to be part of my mainland? I don't think I do. It's going to be an island which is very close to the mainland. I've got a smaller island here. Whoops, it's moving. There we go. Another island here. And I actually think I'm going to add some small islands in like a little island chain, a little archipelago, just to add a little bit more realism to it. In real life, when you've got a bigger island off the coast of a continent, you do sometimes get smaller reefs, little deserted islands. Of course, the climate of your world is something else that we need to consider when we're thinking about that in another video. I like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the beads. And I have there the beginnings of what could be quite an interesting fantasy map. It might be that I want to tweak it and change it a little bit, and that would of course be up to you making your fantasy map. But I don't know necessarily whether that would have been as easy to have made up just out of my own imagination. So I like that. So what I'm going to do for the next few episodes, I'm going to stick with this map, and slowly but surely we're going to populate it with mountain ranges, with rivers, with settlements. We're going to be thinking about the climate, and that in turn is going to affect the flora and fauna of our world. We're going to be thinking about how physics might work slightly differently, what species and races might live there. So there's lots and lots to think about. I'm really, really excited. I love creating these fictional worlds. So we'll wait and see how that goes. So if you've enjoyed this video, this little foray into fantasy maps, make sure to drop a comment down in the comments section. Leave a like. Please subscribe. It's really going to help the channel. And remember to follow me on Twitter, Facebook. And remember to check out the Amazon link that's down in the description to get yourself a copy of my book if it interests you. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I have been Maclellan Moorwood. This has been the Fantasy Workbench, and I will see you in the next chapter.